The cryogenic chamber hummed softly, its faint vibrations echoing through the cold metallic walls of the ship. Inside, rows of glass pods lined the room, each containing a human body suspended in time. For centuries, these people had been asleep, their lives on pause while the universe moved forward without them. The air was thick with frost, and tiny ice crystals clung to the edges of the pods like fragile lace. It was quiet, too quiet, until a low whirring sound began to fill the chamber. One by one, the pods started to hiss as they released their icy grip on their occupants. Steam billowed out, clouding the room in a thick white haze. Among the first to awaken was Daniel, a tall man with sharp features and calloused hands that spoke of years spent fixing machines back on Earth. His eyes fluttered open, squinting against the bright light overhead. At first, everything felt fuzzy, as though he were waking from a deep dream, but then reality hit him hard. Where was he? What had happened? Beside him, another pod opened, revealing Emily, a woman with short brown hair and an alert expression, even in her groggy state. She blinked rapidly, trying to shake off the lingering effects of stasis. Her mind raced as she tried to piece together what was going on. They were supposed to be on a mission to find new worlds for humanity, but something wasn't right. The last thing she remembered was boarding the ship and settling into her pod. After that, nothing. As more people began to stir, panic started to spread. Some sat up groggily, rubbing their eyes or stretching stiff limbs. Others shouted questions no one could answer. "What's going on?" cried Laura, a communications specialist with curly blonde hair. She pressed her face against the glass of her pod, scanning the room for clues. "Why are we awake?" Daniel climbed out of his pod, his legs wobbling slightly as he adjusted to standing again. He reached out to steady himself against the wall, his fingers brushing against the cold metal surface. "Stay calm," he said, raising his voice so everyone could hear him. "We need to figure out where we are and what's happening." Emily joined him, already moving toward the control panel, near the entrance. She tapped at the screen, frowning when strange symbols appeared instead of the familiar interface they had trained with. "This isn't our system," she muttered under her breath. "It's been altered." Her words sent a ripple of unease through the group. A young man named Alex stepped forward, clutching his blanket tightly around his shoulders. "Altered? By who?" he asked, his voice trembling. Before anyone could respond, the lights flickered, plunging the room into momentary darkness. When they came back on, a robotic voice echoed through the chamber. It spoke in a language none of them recognized, a series of clicks, whistles, and guttural tones that made the hair on the back of Daniel's neck stand up. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the voice stopped. Laura grabbed her translator device from a nearby table and began typing furiously. She was determined to make sense of the alien speech. Minutes passed before she finally looked up, her face pale. "I think I got part of it," she said slowly. "Whoever, or whatever, is speaking. They took over the ship. They've been monitoring us while we were asleep." A heavy silence fell over the room. The thought of being watched without their knowledge was unsettling enough, but the idea that some unknown force had control of their vessel was downright terrifying. Emily exchanged a worried glance with Daniel. "If they've taken over, why wake us now?" she asked. No one had an answer, but as if in response to her question, a loud alarm began to blare, accompanied by flashing red lights. The noise was deafening, causing several people to cover their ears. Outside the large windows of the chamber, massive shapes loomed in the darkness of space. Enormous ships, sleek and silver, hovered ominously, their hulls reflecting the distant glow of stars. "They're here," whispered Robert, a medic with glasses perched on his nose. His hands shook as he adjusted them nervously. "Whoever they are, they're outside." Daniel moved closer to the window, peering out at the alien vessels. There must have been dozens of them, each one larger than the Eos Dawn. They looked advanced, far beyond anything humanity had ever created. As he stared, one of the ships detached itself from the formation and began drifting closer. Its movements were deliberate, almost predatory, We need to prepare, Daniel said firmly, turning back to the group. Grab whatever you can use as a weapon. Tools, pipes, anything. We don't know what they want, but we can't go down without a fight. Emily hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. She wanted to argue that violence might not be the best approach, but she also knew Daniel was right. If these aliens meant them harm, they needed to be ready. Quickly, she helped gather supplies, stuffing tools into bags and passing them around. While the others prepared, Laura stayed glued to her translator device, attempting to decode more of the alien transmission. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, sweat beading on her forehead as she worked. Finally, fragments of meaning began to emerge. They call themselves the Caliph, she said haltingly. They say they've ruled the galaxy for centuries, and they think we're primitive. Primitive? Sarah, a fiery pilot with red hair tied back in a braid, scoffed loudly. Let them try telling me that to my face. Despite her bravado, there was tension in her voice. Everyone felt it, the weight of knowing they were completely outmatched. The Caliph were clearly a powerful species, capable of taking over their ship and leaving them in stasis for centuries. Yet here they were, awake and vulnerable with no clear way to defend themselves. Just as the group finished gathering their makeshift weapons, the door to the chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Standing in the doorway were the Caliph. They were unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Towering over them, their bodies were insect-like, covered in shimmering exoskeletons that reflected the light. Multiple limbs clicked together rhythmically as they moved, and their faces, if they could be called that, were blank, featureless masks, save for two glowing orbs where eyes should have been. At the center of the group stood Zinthar, easily identifiable by the ornate patterns etched into his carapace. He regarded the humans with obvious disdain, his posture rigid and imposing. Through the translator device, his voice came through cold and mechanical. You are insignificant, he declared. Your kind has slept while we built our empire. You have nothing to offer. Daniel clenched his fists but forced himself to remain calm. He studied the Caliph carefully, noting small details, the way one of them shifted uncomfortably, the subtle twitch of another's limb. Something about their demeanor didn't match Zinthar's confident words. Were they hiding something? When Daniel asked about the strange energy readings coming from their ship, Zinthar paused, his glowing orbs narrowing slightly. For a brief moment, uncertainty flickered across his otherwise stoic expression. Then, with a dismissive wave of one clawed limb, he ordered the humans back to their quarters. As the Caliph escorted them away, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't being told the whole truth. Whatever the Caliph were hiding, it was big, and it might just be the key to humanity's survival. Back in their designated area, the humans huddled together, whispering urgently. The situation seemed hopeless, but Daniel refused to give up. Somewhere in the chaos, there had to be a way to turn things around. After all, they had survived centuries in stasis. Surely they could survive this too. And so, as the Caliph ships continued to loom outside, casting long shadows over the Eos dawn, the humans began to plan. Their journey was far from over, and though they didn't know it yet, the awakening marked the beginning of something extraordinary. The humans sat in silence, their makeshift weapons scattered around them. The Caliph had left them alone for now, but the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. No one spoke for a while. They were all lost in their thoughts, trying to process what had just happened. Daniel leaned against the wall, his arms crossed as he stared at the floor. Emily paced back and forth, her mind racing with questions. Laura fiddled with her translator device, hoping to uncover more information about the Caliph. Finally, Sarah broke the silence. So, what's the plan? She asked, her voice sharp but tinged with frustration. Are we just going to sit here and wait for them to decide what to do with us? Daniel looked up, meeting her gaze. We can't rush into anything, he said. We don't know enough about them yet. If we act too quickly, we could make things worse. Worse? Alex chimed in, his voice trembling. How much worse can it get? They already think we're primitive. Emily stopped pacing and turned to face the group. That's exactly why we need to be smart about this, she said. If they see us as weak, then maybe we can use that to our advantage, but first we need to figure out what they're hiding. Everyone nodded, agreeing that understanding the Kalith was their best chance at survival. Laura held up her translator device. I managed to decode some of their language earlier, she explained. They mentioned ruling the galaxy and called us insignificant. But there was something else, something about instability in their empire. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Instability, like what? I'm not sure yet, Laura admitted. It's vague, but it sounds serious. Maybe they're dealing with some kind of internal problem. Robert, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. If their empire is unstable, that could work in our favor. If we find out what's causing it, maybe we can exploit it. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Exploit it? How? We're outnumbered, outgunned, and stuck on this ship. We have brains, Emily said firmly. And if we play our cards right, that might be enough. With that, the group decided to split up. Daniel, Emily, and Laura would try to gather more information about the Kalith, while Sarah and Robert stayed behind to organize the others and prepare for any potential confrontations. Before leaving, Daniel reminded everyone to stay alert. If anything happens, stick together, he said. We're stronger as a team. The corridors of the EOS Dawn felt eerier than usual as Daniel, Emily, and Laura made their way toward the control room. The lights flickered occasionally, casting long shadows on the walls. Every step echoed loudly, making them feel exposed and vulnerable. They moved cautiously, keeping an eye out for any sign of the Kalith. When they reached the control room, Emily immediately went to work on the console. Her fingers flew across the screen as she tried to access the ship's systems. There's something strange here, she murmured after a few minutes. It's like part of the system has been rewritten. There are codes I've never seen before. Laura leaned over her shoulder, peering at the screen. Could it be from the Kalith? She asked. Possibly, Emily replied. But there's also something else, a signal coming from deep within the ship. It's faint, but it's definitely there. Daniel frowned. A signal? From who? I don't know, Emily admitted. But whatever it is, it's powerful. It's interfering with the ship's energy grid. Before they could investigate further, the door slid open with a soft hiss. Standing in the doorway were two Kalith guards, their glowing orbs fixed on the humans. One of them clicked its limbs, together sharply, issuing a command in its alien tongue. Laura quickly activated her translator device. They want us to follow them, she whispered. Daniel exchanged a glance with Emily. Neither of them liked the idea of being led anywhere by the Kalith, but they didn't have much choice. Reluctantly, they followed the guards down the corridor, their hearts pounding with every step. They were taken to a large chamber where Zinthar awaited them. The Kalith leader stood at the center of the room, surrounded by holographic displays showing maps of star systems and schematics of ships. His posture was rigid, exuding authority, but there was a flicker of unease in his glowing orbs. You dare tamper with our systems, Zinthar said through the translator device, his voice cold and metallic. Such insolence will not be tolerated. Daniel stepped forward, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. We weren't trying to cause trouble, he said carefully. We're just trying to understand what's going on. Why did you wake us up? Zinthar hesitated, his limbs clicking softly. For a moment it seemed like he might refuse to answer. Then, reluctantly, he gestured toward one of the holograms. Your vessel strayed into forbidden space, he said. It disrupted our operations. Now your presence threatens the stability of our empire. What operations? Emily asked, her curiosity getting the better of her. What are you hiding? The Kalith leader's orbs flared brighter and his tone grew harsher. You ask too many questions, human. You are insignificant. Your fate is irrelevant. But Daniel noticed something. The subtle twitch of Zinthar's limbs, the slight hesitation in his words. Whatever the Kalith were hiding, it was clearly important. And judging by Zinthar's reaction, it was something they didn't want the humans to know. After a tense exchange, the Kalith escorted the trio back to their quarters. Once inside, they wasted no time sharing what they had learned with the others. "They're scared of something," Daniel said. "Whatever it is, it's big enough to shake their entire empire." Sarah folded her arms. "Great. So how do we use that to our advantage?" Emily smiled faintly. "We keep digging. If we can find out what's causing their instability, we might be able to turn it against them." Over the next few hours, the humans worked tirelessly. Emily focused on decoding the mysterious signals she had detected earlier, while Laura continued analyzing the alien language. Meanwhile, Daniel and Sarah organized the rest of the crew, preparing them for any scenario. Weapons were distributed, escape routes were mapped out, and everyone was briefed on what to do if the Caliph attacked. As night fell, or what passed for night aboard the ship, the humans gathered in the common area to discuss their progress. Emily looked exhausted but triumphant. "I found the source of the signal," she announced. "It's coming from one of the lower decks. Something, or someone, is down there, and it's disrupting the Caliph's power grid." Daniel's eyes lit up. "If we can reach it, maybe we can use it to weaken them." "But how do we get past the guards?" Robert asked. "They're everywhere." "We'll have to be sneaky," Sarah said. "Divide and conquer, distract them while a small team goes after the signal." The group agreed on a plan. Early the next morning, they put it into action. Sarah led a group to create a diversion near the main entrance, drawing the attention of several Caliph guards. While the aliens were distracted, Daniel, Emily, and Laura slipped away, heading toward the lower decks. The journey was nerve-wracking. Every sound made them jump, and every shadow seemed to move. Finally, they reached the source of the signal, a sealed door guarded by 2 Caliph sentries. Using tools they had scavenged earlier, Laura managed to disable the locking mechanism. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a dimly lit room filled with strange machinery. In the center of the room was a pulsating orb of light, humming softly. It radiated energy, filling the air with a faint vibration. Emily approached it cautiously, studying its intricate patterns. "This isn't Caliph technology," she said. "It's older, much older." "What does it do?" Daniel asked. "I'm not sure yet," Emily replied. "But it's connected to their power grid. If we can amplify its signal." Laura finished her thought. "We could cripple their entire fleet." Excited but cautious, the trio got to work. Emily and Laura tinkered with the machinery, adjusting settings and rerouting energy flows. Daniel kept watch, ready to defend them if the Caliph returned. After what felt like hours, they finally succeeded. The orb began to glow brighter, its hum growing louder. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed, and the ground shook slightly as the Caliph scrambled to respond. Outside, explosions rocked the alien vessels, sending shockwaves through space. The humans watched in awe as the once mighty Caliph fleet faltered, their ships drifting powerless in the void. For the first time since waking from cryosleep, the humans felt a glimmer of hope. They had struck a blow against the Caliph, proving that even the smallest actions could have monumental consequences. But as they celebrated their victory, they knew the fight was far from over. The Caliph would regroup, and when they did, humanity would need to be ready. Back in their quarters, the humans gathered to reflect on what they had accomplished. Daniel stood by the window, gazing at the stars. "We've taken the first step," he said quietly. "But this is just the beginning." Emily nodded, her expression resolute. "We've shown them that we're not as insignificant as they thought. Now it's time to show them what we're truly capable of." As the Eos dawn drifted silently among the wreckage of the Caliph fleet, the humans prepared for the challenges ahead. They had awakened from centuries of slumber to find themselves in a hostile galaxy, but instead of cowering, they had risen to meet the threat head-on. And though the road ahead would be difficult, they faced it with courage, determination, and the unshakable belief that humanity's destiny lay among the stars. The aftermath of the Caliph fleet's collapse was both exhilarating and terrifying. The humans aboard the Eos Dawn watched as the once dominant alien ships drifted aimlessly in space, their sleek silver hulls now dark and lifeless. Explosions had torn through several vessels, leaving behind debris that floated silently against the backdrop of stars. It was a victory, but it didn't feel like one. The cost of their actions weighed heavily on everyone. Daniel stood by the window, his arms crossed as he stared at the wreckage. His mind raced with questions. Had they done enough? Would the Kaleth regroup and retaliate? And what about the mysterious energy orb they had discovered? What exactly had they unleashed? He glanced over his shoulder at Emily and Laura, who were huddled together near the control panel, still analyzing data from the lower deck. "We disrupted their power grid," Emily said, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "But I don't think we destroyed it completely. They'll recover eventually." Laura nodded, her fingers flying across the screen of her translator device. "From what I've decoded so far, the Kaleth are panicking. Their comms are filled with chaos. They're blaming each other for the failure." Sarah approached them, her fiery red hair tied back into a tight braid. She carried a pipe in one hand, ready to defend the group if needed. "So, what's our next move?" she asked. "Do we run while we have the chance, or do we finish the job?" Emily hesitated. "Running might not be an option. If they track us down, we'll be defenseless, but staying here is risky too. We need more allies." "Allies?" Alex chimed in, his voice trembling. "Who's going to help us? Everyone else out there probably works for the Kaleth." "Not everyone," Daniel said firmly. He turned to face the group, his expression resolute. "The Kaleth ruled this galaxy for centuries, but they didn't do it alone. They had slaves, servants, and conquered races working under them. Some of those people might want freedom just as much as we do." The idea sparked hope among the crew. Sarah cracked a small smile. "If we can find these enslaved races and convince them to join us, maybe we can take the fight to the Kaleth." "But how do we even start looking?" Robert asked, adjusting his glasses nervously. "We don't know where to go or who to trust." "That's why we need to explore," Daniel replied. "There are countless planets and systems out there. Somewhere, someone is suffering under the Kaleth's rule. We just have to find them." With their plan set, the humans prepared to leave the safety of the Eos Dawn. They divided into two teams, one led by Daniel and Emily, tasked with scouting nearby areas for potential allies, and another led by Sarah and Robert, responsible for fortifying the ship and preparing for any attacks. Before departing, Laura handed each team a modified version of her translator device, programmed to pick up signals from enslaved species. As Daniel and Emily stepped onto the airlock ramp, they couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and fear. Outside, the vastness of space stretched endlessly before them, dotted with drifting wreckage and distant stars. Their shuttle hovered nearby, its engines humming softly. They climbed aboard, strapping themselves in as the craft detached from the Eos Dawn and soared into the unknown. Their first stop was a nearby moon orbiting a gas giant. Scans indicated signs of activity, though nothing definitive. As they approached, the surface came into view, a barren landscape littered with craters and jagged rocks. In the distance, they spotted structures resembling mining facilities, their metallic frames glinting faintly in the dim light. "This place looks abandoned," Emily said, peering out the window. "But let's check it out anyway." They landed, cautiously, weapons at the ready. The air inside the facility was stale and cold, carrying the faint scent of rust. Empty corridors stretched ahead, lined with broken machinery and piles of debris. It seemed deserted until they reached a large chamber deep within the complex. There they found a group of beings unlike anything they'd ever seen. These creatures were tall and slender, with translucent skin that shimmered faintly. Their eyes were wide and luminescent, glowing softly in the darkness. Chains bound their wrists and ankles, tethering them to the walls. Despite their captivity, they radiated a quiet dignity, watching Daniel and Emily with cautious curiosity. Who are you?" Emily asked, her voice gentle. She activated her translator device, hoping it could bridge the communication gap. One of the beings stepped forward, its movement slow and deliberate. After a moment, the device translated its words. "We are Lumari, once free, now prisoners of the Caliph." Daniel exchanged a glance with Emily. "We're humans," he explained. "We woke up from stasis and found ourselves caught in the Caliph's web. We're trying to fight back." The Lumari leader tilted its head, studying them carefully. "You are brave to challenge the Caliph, but bravery alone will not win this war. You need knowledge and allies." "We're looking for both," Emily said. "Will you help us?" The Lumari hesitated before nodding slowly. "We will aid you, but only if you promise to free us. Our people have suffered long enough." Daniel extended his hand, sealing the agreement. "We'll get you out of here. Together, we'll bring down the Caliph." Over the next few days, the humans worked tirelessly alongside the Lumari to dismantle the chains binding them. With their newfound allies' guidance, they learned valuable information about the Caliph's operations, including weak points in their defenses and locations of other enslaved races. Armed with this knowledge, they began planning their next move. Meanwhile, back on the Eos Dawn, Sarah and Robert kept watch, ensuring the ship remained secure. They also made repairs using scavenged parts from the Caliph wreckage, upgrading the vessel's systems wherever possible. By the time Daniel and Emily returned with the Lumari, the Eos Dawn was stronger than ever. The combined human-Lumari force launched a series of coordinated attacks on key Caliph outposts, freeing more enslaved species along the way. Each victory bolstered their numbers and strengthened their resolve. Among the liberated races was a group of burly reptilian warriors known as the Varnock, whose combat skills proved invaluable in battle. Another ally was a race of telepathic beings called the Zynar, capable of intercepting and disrupting Caliph communications. As their coalition grew, so did their confidence. For the first time since awakening, the humans felt like they truly had a chance at survival. But the Caliph weren't defeated yet. Reports indicated that the alien leaders had retreated to their homeworld, fortifying their defenses and preparing for a final stand. Daniel gathered the entire group in the main chamber of the Eos Dawn. Standing before them, he addressed the diverse assembly of humans, Lumari, Varnock, and Zynar. "We've come a long way," he began, his voice firm, but kind. "We started as a small crew, lost and afraid. But look at us now. We're united, strong, and ready to take back what belongs to all of us. Freedom." Cheers erupted from the crowd, echoing through the chamber. Emily stepped forward, adding her own words. "This isn't just about defeating the Caliph, it's about building something better, a galaxy where no one has to live in fear or oppression." With renewed determination, the coalition prepared for their final assault. The journey to the Caliph homeworld would be dangerous, but they faced it together, bound by a shared purpose. As the Eos Dawn and its allied fleet set course for the heart of the enemy's empire, the humans knew they were no longer insignificant. They had risen from cryo sleep to become leaders in a galactic revolution, and they wouldn't stop until justice was served. The journey to the Caliph homeworld was long and tense. The Eos Dawn led a ragtag fleet of ships, each one carrying members of the coalition, humans, Lumari, Varnock, Zynar, and others who had joined the fight for freedom. The atmosphere aboard the ships was a mix of hope and apprehension. They had come so far, but the final battle loomed ahead, and everyone knew it would be the hardest yet. Daniel stood on the bridge of the Eos Dawn, his eyes fixed on the stars streaking past the windows. He felt the weight of leadership pressing down on him, but he also felt a quiet sense of pride. These people, these diverse beings from across the galaxy, had trusted him to lead them. Together, they had freed countless worlds from the Caliph's grip. Now they were about to face their greatest challenge. Emily joined him, her arms crossed as she gazed at the same endless expanse of space. "Do you think we're ready?" she asked softly, her voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's engines. Daniel hesitated before answering. "I don't know," he admitted. "But we've got no choice. If we don't stop the Caliph now, they'll rebuild their empire stronger than ever. We can't let that happen." Emily nodded, her expression resolute. "We've made it this far. That has to count for something. As the fleet approached the Calith homeworld, the sheer scale of the enemy's defenses became clear. Enormous orbital platforms bristled with weapons, and swarms of smaller ships patrolled the skies. The planet itself was a fortress, its surface covered in sprawling cities of shimmering metal connected by glowing energy conduits. It was beautiful, in a cold, alien way, but also terrifying. Sarah, piloting the Eos Dawn, guided the ship through, the chaos weaving between blasts of energy fired by the Calith defenders. Her hands moved deftly over the controls, her focus absolute. "Hold on!" she shouted as the ship rocked violently from an impact. "This is going to get messy." Coalition ships followed close behind, their own weapons firing back. Explosions lit up the void as vessels on both sides were torn apart. Despite the odds, the humans and their allies fought fiercely, driven by the knowledge that failure meant slavery, or worse, for all of them. In the heat of the battle, Laura worked tirelessly at her station, coordinating communications between the different species. Her translator device crackled with voices speaking dozens of languages, but she kept calm, relaying orders and updates to the commanders. "The orbital platforms are weakening," she called out. "Focus fire on the southern quadrant." Daniel turned to Emily, who was monitoring the energy readings. "How's the orb holding up? Can we use it again?" Emily shook her head. "It's unstable. Amplifying its signal here could destroy us, and maybe the whole planet." "Then, we'll have to do this the hard way," Daniel said grimly. The coalition forces managed to breach the orbital defenses, allowing a small strike team, led by Daniel, Emily, and Sarah, to land on the planet's surface. Accompanying them were several Lumari and Varnock warriors, their determination unwavering. Their mission was simple: infiltrate the central command center and disable the Calith's primary power source. The descent was harrowing. Enemy fire rained down on them as they descended in drop pods, shaking violently until they finally touched down. Smoke filled the air as they emerged, weapons drawn. Around them, the cityscape gleamed ominously, its towering structures casting long shadows. "This way," Daniel said, pointing toward a massive spire at the heart of the city. "That's where we need to go." The team moved quickly, dodging patrols and using cover to avoid detection. Along the way, they encountered enslaved workers, beings of various species forced to labor under the Calith's rule. When the workers saw the Coalition's insignia, they cheered quietly, offering what little help they could. Some provided maps while others sabotaged nearby machinery to create distractions. As they neared the spire, the resistance intensified. Calith soldiers poured into the streets, their glowing orbs scanning for targets. The Varnock warriors charged forward, their brute strength smashing through the enemy lines. The Lumari used their agility to flank the Calith, striking swiftly and retreating before they could be overwhelmed. Sarah took out snipers from a distance, her aim steady despite the chaos around her. Finally, the team reached the entrance to the spire. Heavy doors barred their way, but Emily quickly set to work, bypassing the lock. "Got it!" she exclaimed as the doors slid open with a hiss. Inside, the corridors were eerily silent, the only sound the faint hum of machinery. They climbed higher, following the path to the central chamber. As they ascended, the walls grew thicker, lined with pulsating veins of energy that seemed alive. When they reached the top, they found themselves in a vast room dominated by a massive crystal suspended in mid-air. Its light pulsed rhythmically, radiating waves of energy that powered the entire Calith Empire. Standing guard was Zinthar, the Calith leader, his carapace glinting menacingly in the crystal's glow. "You dare trespass here," Zinthar growled, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You will die for your insolence." Daniel stepped forward, raising his weapon. "Not today," he said firmly. "Your reign ends now." The battle that followed was fierce. Zinthar moved, with surprising speed, his limbs clicking together as he attacked. The Lumari and Varnock warriors engaged him directly, their combined strength barely able to hold him at bay. Meanwhile, Emily and Sarah worked together to disable the crystal's power flow, dodging blasts of energy as they scrambled to reach The control panel. Laura stayed close to Daniel, her translator device active as she tried to decipher the commands needed to shut everything down. "Almost there," she shouted, typing furiously. Zinthar roared in frustration, lashing out with devastating force. One of the Varnok fell, his body crumpling to the ground. Another Lumari stumbled but kept fighting, her resolve unbroken. Finally, Emily slammed, her hand down on the last button. The crystal shuddered, its light flickering wildly before dimming completely. The room plunged into darkness, save for the faint emergency lights lining the walls. Zinthar staggered, his movements sluggish without the crystal's power. For the first time, fear showed in his glowing orbs. "What have you done?" he demanded, his voice weaker than before. "We've taken back our future," Daniel replied, stepping closer. "And yours is over." With a final burst of defiance, Zinthar lunged, but the combined efforts of the team brought him down. His body collapsed to the floor with a metallic clang, motionless. Back outside, the coalition forces celebrated their victory. Without the central power source, the Kalith's defenses crumbled, and their remaining forces surrendered. The enslaved races cheered as their chains were broken, embracing their newfound freedom. On board the Eos Dawn, the humans gathered in the main chamber, exhausted but triumphant. Daniel addressed the crowd, his voice filled with emotion. "Today we proved that even the smallest spark can ignite change. We may have started as insignificant, but together we became unstoppable." Emily smiled, her eyes shining with tears. "This isn't just the end of the Kalith, it's the beginning of something new, a galaxy united, free to chart its own course." As the Eos Dawn soared away from the Kalith homeworld, the humans looked toward the stars with renewed hope. They had awoken from cryosleep to find themselves in a hostile galaxy, but they had risen to meet the challenge. Together they had forged alliances, toppled tyrants, and claimed their place among the stars. Their journey was far from over, but, for the first time, they faced it not as victims or prisoners, but as rulers of their own destiny. The victory over the Kalith was a turning point, but it wasn't the end of the story. The humans and their allies knew that rebuilding the galaxy would take time, effort, and cooperation. With the Kalith Empire in ruins, countless worlds were left without leadership or resources. It was up to the coalition to step in and help stabilize the chaos. Daniel stood on the bridge of the Eos Dawn, staring out at the stars as the ship drifted through space. His mind was filled with thoughts about what came next. They had defeated the Kalith, but now they faced an even bigger challenge, creating something better. "What do we do now?" he asked aloud, though no one else was there to hear him. Emily walked in a moment later carrying a tablet filled with data. She had been working tirelessly to assess the damage across the galaxy. "We start by helping those who need it most," she said, her tone calm but determined. "There are planets out there struggling to survive. If we can bring them food, medicine, and supplies, we'll give them a chance to rebuild." Daniel nodded. "But how do we decide where to go first? There's so much ground to cover." "We prioritize," Emily replied. "The Zynar have offered to scan for distress signals. Their telepathic abilities make them perfect for finding places in crisis. Over the next few weeks, the Coalition launched relief missions to dozens of planets. Each mission brought new challenges and heart-wrenching scenes of devastation. On one world, they found cities reduced to rubble, their inhabitants scavenging for scraps. On another, entire populations were suffering from starvation after years of oppression under the Kalith. Sarah led several of these missions, her fiery determination driving her team forward even when things seemed hopeless. During one particularly difficult landing, she stepped off the shuttle to find a group of children huddled together, their faces gaunt and eyes hollow. She knelt down, offering them rations from her pack. "It's going to be okay," she said, softly, though she wasn't sure if she believed it herself. Back on the Eos Dawn, Laura worked around the clock to coordinate communication between the different species. Her translator device buzzed constantly as she relayed messages and organized supply drops. Despite the exhaustion, she felt a sense of purpose she'd never known before. For the first time in her life, she truly felt like she was making a difference. Meanwhile, Robert tended to the injured and sick, setting up makeshift clinics wherever they landed. His gentle hands and steady voice comforted those who had lost everything. He often stayed late into the night, treating wounds and listening to stories of hardship. Though he rarely spoke about it, the weight of what he saw haunted him. As the coalition continued its work, word spread quickly about their efforts. More and more species joined their cause, bringing fresh perspectives and skills to the table. Some offered ships to expand the fleet, while others contributed knowledge or technology. Slowly but surely, the fractured galaxy began to come together. One day, Daniel called a meeting in the main chamber of the Eos Dawn. Representatives from every member of the coalition gathered. Humans, Lumari, Varnock, Zynar, and many others. The room buzzed with conversation as everyone waited for him to speak. "We've done incredible things," Daniel began, his voice carrying across the chamber. "We've freed countless worlds and saved millions of lives. But we're not done. Yet, the Caliph may be gone, but the scars they left behind will take generations to heal." He paused, letting his words sink in. "If we want this galaxy to thrive, we need to build something lasting, something that ensures no one ever has to suffer under tyranny again." Emily stepped forward, holding up her tablet. "That's why we're proposing the formation of a galactic council, a council made up of representatives from every species, working together to govern fairly and peacefully." The idea sparked immediate debate. Some argued that such a council would be too complicated to manage, while others worried it might lead to new conflicts. But slowly, the skepticism gave way to cautious optimism. After all, they had already proven that cooperation was possible. Lumari Elder raised a shimmering hand, silencing the room. "This council, it could be our chance to create something beautiful," they said, their voice soft but resonant. "But it must be built on trust. We cannot repeat the mistakes of the past." Everyone agreed, and plans for the council began in earnest. Teams were formed to draft rules and guidelines, ensuring every voice would be heard. Delegates were chosen to represent their respective species, tasked with shaping the future of the galaxy. While the council took shape, the humans turned their attention to another pressing issue: the mysterious energy orb that had played a key role in their fight against the Caliph. Emily had been studying it closely, trying to understand its origins and purpose. What she discovered shocked everyone. "It's ancient," she explained during a briefing. "Far older than the Caliph or any of us. Whoever created it had technology beyond anything we've seen." Daniel frowned. "Do you think it's dangerous?" "Not necessarily," Emily replied. "But it's powerful. If used incorrectly, it could destroy entire star systems. That's why I think we should seal it away for good." The decision was unanimous. A team was assembled to transport the orb to a remote planet, deep in uncharted space. There they constructed a secure vault to house it, hidden beneath layers of rock and protected by advanced shielding. As the final door closed, sealing the orb inside, Emily felt a mix of relief and sadness. The artifact had helped them win the war, but its power was too great to risk keeping it accessible. With the orb secured and the council growing stronger every day, the humans aboard the Eos Dawn finally allowed themselves a moment to breathe. They gathered in the common area, sharing stories and laughter as they celebrated their achievements. Sarah cracked jokes, her sharp wit earning cheers from the crowd. Even Alex, who had once been timid and unsure, joined in, his confidence bolstered by everything they had accomplished. But amidst the celebration, Daniel couldn't shake a lingering feeling of unease. He excused himself and went to the observation deck, gazing out at the endless expanse of stars. Emily joined him a short while, later sensing his mood. "What's bothering you?" she asked gently. Daniel sighed. "I keep thinking about the Caliph. What if they're not completely gone? What if they're out there waiting to strike back?" Emily placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We've prepared for that possibility. The coalition is stronger than ever, and the council will ensure we stay united. Besides, we've proven we can handle whatever comes our way." Daniel smiled faintly. "You're right. Maybe I'm just being paranoid." No, Emily said firmly. You're being careful, and that's exactly what makes you a good leader. In the days that followed, the Eos Dawn set course for a distant star system, guided by reports of a habitable planet ripe for colonization. It was a fresh start, a chance to plant roots and build a new home. As the ship sailed through the void, the humans reflected on how far they had come since awakening from cryosleep. They had started as frightened survivors unsure of their place in the universe. Now they were pioneers, forging a path toward a brighter future. For Daniel, Emily, and the rest of the crew, the journey was far from over. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, many of which still awaited discovery. But for the first time they faced it not with fear, but with hope. Together, they had risen from insignificance to become architects of a new era, an era defined not by conquest, but by unity. And as the stars streaked past the windows of the Eos Dawn, they knew that whatever lay ahead they would face it side by side.